All right, let's start the tasting component of the tour here. So I've got our four mainstay products, our Sonoma Rye, Sonoma Bourbon, Cherrywood Rye, and Cherrywood Smoked Bourbon. But I've also got the K&L Wine single barrel as well for you to hear my tasting notes on. We'll discuss tasting notes, we'll discuss pairings as well, because I really feel like the food and whiskey culture really does need a connection point, because again, people pair food with wines all day long. They should be doing that as well with whiskey, especially good barrel selections. So I'm gonna jump into Sonoma Bourbon first. So this is a wheated bourbon. This is very similar to a style of bourbon you'd find from Kentucky, Old Fitzgerald, Larceny, Maker's Mark, Old Weller, Antique. So this is really meant to be a bit more sort of wheat-driven, vanillins, English toffees, you know, a lot more of those sort of like softer leather notes on there. Again, the sweet mash versus sour mash, so this is not going to smell like a sour mash bourbon. It's really meant to be a California bourbon, a little bit on the drier side too. Good, a little bit herbaceous in there. Nice long finish. And sit there and chew on that whiskey for a while. That's our goal. Again, it's also fairly unique too because it's a pot distilled bourbon. From there, I would recommend going into rye. Cocktail-wise, old-fashioned Sazeracs, Vucquerets, you know, sort of the traditional cocktails that you would see with bourbon. This one also, because it has a lot of nice stone fruit notes on there too, does really well with the cognac addition there too. So if you're making cocktails at home, that's certainly my recommendation there. Food pairing wise, I always tell people roasted chickens and duck fat fries and asparagus and a little bit melted cheese on top. Wouldn't do wrong. Next one on the list, Sonoma Rye. So our Sonoma Rye product was actually the first thing we made here. This is 100% rye, 80% unmalted, 20% rye malt. Really beautiful rye bread notes. So this is just meant to be a big rye, you know, sort of a Russian rye bread with those sort of dark pumpernickel sort of flavor profiles to it. Spicy, softens and mellows out, gets a nice chocolate notes on the finish, and that's really what you're trying to target, is something that tastes like rye. You know, I felt like a lot of ryes when we first started making this product just tasted like high rye bourbons because they had corn or barley. And so by using 100% rye, it really does pronounce that beautiful sort of bouquet rye note. Same cocktail application there too, as I mentioned before, especially when you want to bring out that rye spice a bit more. It sort of gives it a bit more structure on that cocktail too. From there, we're going to go into what we call our distillers editions today. That's our Cherrywood Rye and Cherrywood Smoked Bourbon. So when we're making blends, we're doing blends of 30-gallon barrels or 53-gallon barrels. We used to use some 15s as well. And what I'll do is I'll do blends of variable ages. So when I ask people ask me how old these products are, you know, they're generally between 2 years and about 4.5 years, because we are rolling forward some of the previous batches to marry the flavors together, and then we're also pulling new barrels that are coming of age that are sort of ready to rock and roll. We're pulling those barrels, we're proofing them down, and we're putting them into the blends as well. These blends, as I mentioned the age statement on there, they're all straight, just to also mention that as well. But then the blend size is variable as well. So, you know, we're doing blends of a couple thousand gallons in the rye and bourbon, and then these distillers editions are probably sub 1,000 gallons a piece for now as we start to build up more and more stock. So the Cherrywood Rye, a fun product for us, something that I created that I really wanted to sort of be different. The rye whiskey category is a fairly static space, so something that has a bit more of the smoke playing like a dry maraschino in your cocktail. So it's 80% rye, it's 10% wheat, so imagine sort of like a cherry soda. It's got that froth of the cherry soda, and then 10% cherrywood smoked barley. Now you saw the cherrywood smoker before. That's what feeds this animal in here too, which is certainly great. Now a lot of the rum drinkers like this one. It has a really beautiful sort of viscous, high estery, sugar stone fruit note on there too. I know I mentioned stone fruit before, but a lot of that's open top fermentations. You get a lot of those high esters on there. but it's also just a really unique product, and I've never seen any or many smoked ryes. And this one really plays with the smoke differently. It's not meant to be like a smoky Scotch. It's really meant to be more like a modifier in a cocktail. So if you make cocktails at home, this is a super easy one to work with because it already has some of that maraschino smoke in there, which again, it's more like a smoky haze than a super deep, rich smoke. Food pairing wise, I tell people typically this would be a good for like gamier meats, boar. I do like a really good like boar ragu at home. You know, that sort of gamier meat does really well. Venison can do really well too. I do a nice reduction sauce. I made a reduction sauce with steak last night. So stuff like that really plays super, super nice with that product as well. Really would be really good with like an endive salad if you're gonna be doing salads with it too. Some really nice sort of like some baby arugula, just because of the sort of the bitterness on the back end of that would play nicely, both complement the rye as well as also let that smoke kind of pop out. Last one on our mainstay products, Cherrywood Bourbon. So this bourbon is meant to be smokier than the rye. It's 67% corn, 20% rye, 13% cherrywood smoke, whereas the other one is 80% rye, 10% wheat, 10% cherrywood smoked barley. Nice part about us as well, just as another differentiator, you'll see the mash bills are on all of our glass. So we like to be super transparent about what goes into the glass. We sort of figure that the consumers deserve to know, especially when they're buying bottles at that, you know, $35 to $50 price point. So this is cherrywood smoked bourbon. It's similar to the one you have for the single barrel. The uniqueness of this one is rather than taking a whole bunch of 30s and dumping them together, I chose one individual single barrel for yours that we worked with you guys at K&L to determine to be of appropriate stature to be sold. These are all at bottle strength as well. All the regular releases you saw, variable ranges between 92, 93, 95.6 proof. This is also 95.6 proof, so a little on the higher side. You have a cask strength single barrel, which is a good idea. So cherrywood smoked bourbon. You know, it really reminds me of a good smoking jacket. It has a nice sort of nice velvety sort of flavor profile to it. Super good in cocktails as well. If you decide to put these, any of the cocktails I mentioned before, it does really well. Boulevardier in particular can do nicely because it complements some of the Campari in there too. But this one, again, gamier meats will do super well. We also make like a lentil soup at home. I would strongly recommend that too. And then lastly, just to jump into it as well, let's talk about the single barrel option we've got. So this is a single barrel that you all purchased from us. This is one 30-gallon barrel versus a bunch of 53-gallon barrel, a bunch of 30-gallon barrels that get commingled. This is that cask strength, so I see yours is at 110.5, so 55.5% alcohol, so slightly higher ABV. The goal of that is to let you try it straight out of a barrel. You can add your own ice, your own water to it. There really is no harm or foul in adjusting these products as you see fit. My only strong recommendation is use filtered water if you're going to do it. Sometimes people use bottled water. If bottled water is actually filtered or not, we'll debate for another time. But the reality is you want to make something that's a little pure, because the last thing you want to do is to have a good whiskey then be impacted by this. So this one in particular, it really is a fun barrel because it has a lot of beautiful floral notes on the top end of it. So I'm smelling a lot of baking spices and a lot of anise and a lot of allspice on the nose. And then as you actually get into the palate itself, yeah, so doesn't drink like 110 proof, I promise you that. I do this for a living. For the most part, I'm pretty honest. This product in particular, a really fun barrel, has a lot of unique character to it because it's deeper, it's richer. So rather than our normal product, as I mentioned, it's a commingling of hundreds of barrels or less. This one happens to be something that is just such a unique expression. So when we choose single barrels, we say, can this barrel stand on its own 2 feet? Does it have enough unique flavor profiles that make it stand out from the crowd? And so I've been really impressed by this one because it doesn't drink like 110 proof. it has a lot more baking spices and a lot more sort of like, think of like a really nice sort of like gateway into celebratory holidays, especially as we get into the fall. Ideally, it'll probably be gone by then, but thinking about Christmas and Thanksgiving and all those opportunities to think of more sort of homey, warm weather, colder weather environment. This is a fun product because it's versatile. This would also do really, really well in a highball too, which I strongly recommend people drink more of. It's just ice, whiskey, and really nice bubbly water. The reason, of course, that it's a nice drink is that it thins the whiskey out, so you get a chance to try it and taste it a bit more and to sort of evaluate it for itself. It's also nice and hydrating too. I'm not advocating that it's healthy, but I'm saying that it's at least hydrating. So you really get a sense or feel like you're actually putting good stuff back into your body too, so you can sort of function at whatever thing you're trying to function at. So the highball is great. I love it. Think about Japanese whiskey culture. That's a fun one. Those who happen to like Japanese style whiskeys, just to sort of point that out, this would be a fun one for you because you're really gonna like the complexity there. It's got a lot of layers to it. I'm still sort of chewing on it as I'm talking. So I think this is a fun barrel. You all have chosen very wisely. This was distilled in 2015. So functionally, this is between 4.5 and 5-year-old whiskey that you've chosen. So this is a nice old barrel. Had some really nice old woody notes in there too. And again, 100% made by us here in Rohnert Park, California. So thank you so much for joining me for this tasting. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us on our Sonoma whiskey. You can go check us out on our website again, sonomadistillingcompany.com. And again, thank you so much for all your purchases and your support. Look forward to seeing you. Bye.